Now, Starmer will be the fifth foreign leader to visit China this year. Besides Finland, the leaders of South Korea, Ireland and Canada all have been to Beijing already. For more on these visits, let's go to Aurel Braun. He's a Professor of International Relations and Political Science at the University of Toronto. Good to have you on the program tonight, Aurel. Now, is this the silver lining of Trump's erratic and destabilising power grabs, that foreign leaders are flying in to build their relationships with Beijing instead?
We certainly see that all of these leaders coming to Beijing are getting a very warm reception. They're praised. They are offered opportunities, mutual trust, deepen economic relations. Most of them are coming to China, and they are running huge trade deficits in favor of China. So there's an economic motivation as well. And they certainly are feeling beset by Mr. Trump, who has disparaged the Europeans, who has attacked NATO, who has attacked European contributions, and has also used tariffs. So one can understand that there is an economic impetus as well as a reaction to the United States. Now, each country has certain specifics that they want, of course. In the case of Finland, they want to diversify trade and they want to reduce the deficit. They also want to have better relations with China because China now has become, by its own definition, a near Arctic state. And therefore they have an interest to cooperate. Finland also has given up its neutrality and is a member of NATO. At the same time, it is very concerned about Russia, and China has an enormous amount of influence with Russia, and undoubtedly this is one of the other factors in the case of Finland warming up relations with China. Britain, of course, is a much larger country, and here you have a state that views itself as the best friend of the United States. That has been repeated by various prime ministers, but at the same time, they feel increasingly alienated from Mr. Trump personally, even though they claim that they want to maintain a very strong relationship with the United States. So this is part of a kind of diversification of relations that includes political aspects, economic aspects, as well as strategic ones.
Beijing's pitch to build an EU-China community for a shared future is to try and maintain multilateralism that curtails Trump's attempts to establish this kind of new world order. Is, though, multilateralism even possible without the world's biggest superpower?
It's going to be very, very difficult because you will notice that the Chinese president talked about strengthening the United Nations and international law. The sad reality is that the United Nations has failed massively when it comes to preserving security internationally, and this is why Western European countries and the United States have NATO, and they do not want to give up on that alliance. So there's that internal tension between what is collective security, which would be the United Nations, which has not worked, and collective defense, which is NATO, which now is under tremendous stress from Mr. Trump. And so the Europeans want to have a larger voice and a more independent position and capacity within NATO, but they're not ready to give up on it. So there is this kind of difference that may seem subtle at first, but it is quite significant, and there may be certain limits to how far these countries will go, although obviously China, as well as the European countries, find it beneficial to improve relations.
Right. Canada's Prime Minister set the tone when Carney travelled to Beijing last week, describing at Davos that the global order was at the point of rupture, not a transition. How does China view this perspective, especially as the two nations build closer ties?
Well, Mr. Carney has a talent for making grand speeches and promises and aspirations, and I don't know when he noticed that there was a rupture. But, you know, when you look at the world and how power has been played and balance of power systems, this is not something that is that revelatory. And he quoted Thucydides without understanding him, and Václav Havel out of context. So we have to be very careful with what Mr. Carney says. He's a very clever politician. He probably will run for re-election because he has a minority government. But nonetheless, he does want to diversify Canada's trade. But obviously there are limitations. Geography and history mean that the closest relationship will remain with the United States. And you could see that there was a conversation between Mr. Carney and Mr. Trump, two different versions of that. And also, Canada is an Arctic state, so it has both interests that differ with China and also interests that overlap with China.
All right, Aurel Braun, we'll leave it there. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.